This week on Rockstar Superhero.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rockstar Superhero Podcast. It's 2018 and it's been 1 year since I released my last show. Today on the show I have the incredible Ian Buchanan. Ian is basically the godfather of modern soap operas. He's been on a number of different shows, died a whole bunch of times, and he's a legend. And I'm so lucky I got him on the show. So you have to pay attention to a few things here. One, I made a complete fool of myself. I was truly, truly nervous. And I think just because I have been out of the business for the last year, I just stumbled all over my words. I was really, truly struggling. And second of all, because he pinged me on Skype a little earlier than I was expecting, I actually failed to hit my record button on my recording unit, and so I missed maybe the first 3 or 4 minutes of our conversation. So the best I can offer you is, well, wherever it starts. So I'm going to do a little fade in, and you'll just have to deal with it. That being said, Ian was born in Scotland. I got to make sure I get that in because that was cut, and grew up in a artistic family, and was discovered through the Ford Modeling Agency, and that's what led him into his incredible life. So please enjoy this podcast with the inimitable Ian Buchanan, currently on The Bold and the Beautiful. Make sure you check out all the liner notes. There's a lot of great stuff to hear. And please support Ian's charities. They mean so much. Rock and roll, guys. Have a great one.
What started out as being a small town outside of Glasgow called East Kilbride, but then it was a designated new town where they took overspill from the cities and they expanded the town. So it started when I was first lived there. There was probably about 10,000 people, and by the time I was a teenager, there was about 150,000 people, I think, and now it's probably twice that. So.
Wow! So is it a requirement that being a Scot that you have Amazing Grace played at bagpipes at your funeral? Is that one of those silly little things?
I haven't experienced that yet. Actually, probably at a TV funeral they played it. I think one of my funerals. I've actually heard more bagpipes since I've lived in America than I ever heard in Scotland. But they do have bagpipes in Scotland. But here, I have done more Scottish-based things and worn more tartan, I think, in America than I ever wore in Scotland. So.
Right. Maybe it's just that desire to want to represent your native land.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And, people, there's a lot of Scottish heritage here in the States, and there, some towns in New Jersey are primarily still Scottish, but it's very interesting. I think as I've learned American history, I've also probably learned more Scottish history at the same time. So it's been.
How long have you been in the States?
I've been in the States for almost 40 years.
So when you came here for Strasberg?
I came here. The Ford Model Agency brought me to New York as a model, and I went to study at Strasberg almost immediately. Yeah, early
That's
80s.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in an artistic family? Was that where this all?
No, I don't think so. I think my father was probably sort of. I know he liked poetry. My mother liked music. No, they were not artistic. Even my family, not. I think the younger generation tend to be probably, probably more artistic. But no, my family grew up basically almost in the country, just on the edge of a town, and my family still are kind of animal people, country people, they agriculture. So
okay, so
I was kind of as. Ian McKellen, once described himself as being the only giraffe on the farm. So,
I'm not sure if I get that, but I love how that sounds.
Yes.
So I'm assuming then, I think of, I hate to go with the stereotypes, but I think of I don't know, Highlander or Braveheart, Grassy Field, Sideways Rain. Is there a lot of that? Is that as commonplace as I suspect?
Yes, it's very much part of. Unless, yeah, I mean, you don't have to go far outside the cities to be in rolling hills and then mountains and lochs, and definitely 4 seasons in a day.
No, that's fabulous. So you had mentioned the Ford Modeling Agency. That was originally how you were discovered?
Yes. It was. In Spain, actually, when I was in my late teens, I was asked to do a photo shoot for something, and I did, and I quite liked it, and they quite liked me. So then that became my career for almost 10 years. So.
Yes. No, I believe I had seen some of your older work in Japan. My wife is actually Japanese, and so you seem to have found your way around the globe.
Yes, I did. I was in Japan off and on for 4 years, every winter for 4 years.
Okay.
Introduced the Sony Walkman, did all of their advertising, commercials, and print stuff, and a lot of fashion stuff, and Mitsubishi, Suntory, a lot of stuff, a lot of clients there. So I loved it. I loved the aesthetic, loved the culture, loved the people. So.
Yeah, well, I imagine it's a bit intimidating sometimes to be known as a lovely person, to be without embarrassing you, to be seen as beautiful. Is that a difficult thing? Because I'm clearly not that.
Well, come on.
I'm not fishing for it, Ian. You are striking, and there is something amazing to be said about that.
I think on reflection, it's served me well, but I think I'm probably not. I've never really been sort of aware of it, or kind of. I mean, I know what works and I know what doesn't work, and sometimes I think the great thing for me getting older is I feel people are looking at me less. Therefore, I get to look at other things more. So. Which I rather enjoy. It's actually served me very well. I tend to be very observant, and when everybody's focused on you, you don't really get to focus on anything outside. So.
Yeah, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of things that you've posted online show your keen eye for detail. A lot of photography based on flowers and bouquets, for example. There's a lot of color in your life.
Yes, there is. Absolutely. I love that.
Yes.
I dream in color. So I like to, it's what I see. It's really? What I see. That's the way I see things. So
I've always wondered how much truth there is to the idea that we don't dream in color, because not to attempt to one-up you, because I couldn't, but I found that on occasion, I at least remember colors in certain dreams I've had, but not on a consistent basis.
I remember my dreams pretty clearly. When I wake up, sometimes I kind of make notes of them, but they definitely are pretty colorful. I think, maybe depending how many glasses of wine I had before I go to sleep, but red wine makes them very vibrant, I think. But, I think they're in color, and also with great sound as well. So
that's fabulous. I love it. Yeah. That's fabulous. Well, you went to New York with Ford, and you.
Yes.
What helped you step into? What was the inspiration to get you to take a chance on something like Strasberg?
For years I'd done television commercials, and the one thing that I had that now, of course, is like sort of very, very popular and kind of a positive. I had a very heavy Scottish accent, and I was very aware of that. And when I lived in London, a lot of my friends were well-known actors, Ian Charleston and Rupert Everett, and all like work. And they always said, if you could lose your accent, you should probably think about acting. And I was completely, I think, intimidated at the thought. So I was very happy doing a lot of things where I didn't speak, and just almost like doing silent movies, but doing television commercials where I never spoke, and doing a lot of still photography and stuff. And then when I got to New York, I thought I could probably explore it a little more, not having those limitations of my peer pressure around me. And I was very much on my own. So I kind of stumbled into Strasberg, which I heard about, of course, and just loved it. And then from there, I was encouraged to go to a voice coach, and very quickly sort of mellowed out sort of softened my accent. So it was, by the time I started testing for stuff, General Hospital was one of the first things I tested for. By the time I started testing, I no longer needed subtitles. So it was kind of it had to change even more, because even my pronunciation, I think at the beginning of certain things, was almost unintelligible. So I learned to soften it and learned to kind of change it, and there we go. And now, of course, when I have to do a Scottish accent, I'm like, no, I can't go there. I can't, but I can.
Sure. No, well, speaking to you just now, it's very clear that you've your accent has been softened over time. It certainly makes sense.
Right.
With Strasberg, if you don't mind me asking an additional question, I'm curious, just from the outside, is there an audition process, or is there more about, I would like to attend here, I'd like to pay the tuition, and yes, just use that self-discovery?
Yes. Basically, if you can afford to go there, you can go there. But it's not. It's not easy. I think a lot of people drop out, I believe, but it's pretty hard. It's pretty intense. Emotionally, it's very intense. But I went from there to then being a foreign observer, which I sort of loved, not at the UN, but at the Actors Studio, which was then just very enlightening for me. And I got to actually work there a lot too, and do scene work, and also do work in progress plays and showcases and stuff, which was very exciting. And I loved that. So
you were a part of the Actors Studio, you said?
As a foreign observer, yes. Wow. But I got to actually participate, which I was very fortunate.
So stepping away then from the school, do you consider yourself still to be a method actor, or are there many other disciplines they teach there? I consider I think from my own experience, and I think I've heard other people say this, that you think you may have learned something until you actually go to work, and then you realize you have to start learning. Right.
You have to learn. But I remember Peter Falk, when I did Columbo. He was great. I loved working with him. But it was my first single camera sort of big thing. It was a movie of the week, and everybody was giving me advice. Look for this and look for that, and be careful. Find your light. And Peter, I went to have lunch with him in his trailer, and he said, you'll be in this business a long time, and the longer you're in this business, you'll learn what everybody else is doing, but only focus on your work, because nobody else can do what you do. Only focus on your work, and don't be looking to see. And it was very good advice, because I've worked with people who are always telling, always giving people technical hints and that's not my job. My job's not that. So my job is to be present and be as authentic as I can be. So.
Yeah, it's not only great advice, but it's kind advice. I think that's probably rare in the industry. Is that true?
It's actually not. I consider myself to have been very lucky. I think few people have been unkind to me. The people who are usually don't get away with it, but most people have been very kind, and I in turn have learned to be very kind. Also, people are not kind in the industry just to be kind. It also, makes things go better, go smoother. Like you get through the day.
Sure.
There's nothing worse than having somebody so terrified that they can't speak, and also you have to make that all right, and make that person comfortable, and so therefore you can get the work done. So
yes. Well, was the next leap actually into General Hospital, or were there a lot of commercials, a lot of little bit parts before you?
There were a lot of commercials, and then I did a guest star on The Equalizer with Edward Woodward.
Oh.
And then I started auditioning, but I think one of the first things I actually auditioned for was General Hospital. They flew me out to LA to screen test for that, and I was living in New York. And they flew me out here, and then within 2 months, I was relocated or moved by the network, as they always like to say. I've been moved by the network several times, not emotionally, but physically moved by the network.
Well, it's such a high-profile opportunity. I mean, I imagine it was both overwhelming and exciting, very, very exciting.
Yes, it was. It was kind of. I think it was probably more overwhelming than I think it was a lot to kind of take in, especially having to move and move into a new home and be in a city where I really didn't know people and go to work. And also it was high profile. And then there were so many more shows. So it was a huge. It was just a huge culture, and the audience was like, probably 10 times what it is now, I think.
Right.
So, and there were like tons of magazines, and every week we do a photo shoot, and not only working every day, and then, flying to do appearances, take the red eye on a Friday and do something Saturday, Sunday, fly back on a Sunday, go back to work on a Monday. It was a lot. It was a lot.
It's extraordinary. I love what you've done. You also played one of my favorites. You played Lord Sheraton on Days of Our Lives, which happens to be the greatest character name of all time, Lord Sheraton.
I think you could see the Sheraton Hotel from the studio or from the writer's room, and I think it was that was the inspiration, just looking up. And I think whoever created that character, and Leslie Ann Dunn played Lady Sheraton. We had a great time. I loved that. She's great. I love her.
That's fabulous. Days of Our Lives was my favorite soap for a very long time. It was actually a soap that my mother had started with back in 1965 in the very first season. And I fell in love with it as a teen, and even though I'm only a few years younger than you, I still stick with it. I pay attention to what's going on even today. It's crazy stuff. So I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, I'll get out of the soap opera stuff. I know you are, though, currently still recurring on Bold and Beautiful, correct?
Bold and Beautiful, yeah. Okay. Not as recurring, but not maybe a couple of months I'm in there. So.
Okay. So it's not it's not a daily occurrence.
No, it's not.
Okay. Sadly, would you like it to be? May I start a fan campaign? I kind of going through what we call the car wash every day at like 6:30. Fitting, hair, makeup, haircut, like whatever, blocking, is a lot. I don't know how people do it I've done it every day, but you get to a point where it's pretty exhausting. So yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I've never done it, but coming from the music business, I certainly understand the hurry up and wait concept of getting there, preparing, sitting around, doing a sound check, and then waiting 3 hours, barfing before you go on stage, and then go home and start over.
Yeah, it's the process. I think is kind of. I mean, I love it. I love the work. The process is just sort of really, I think, kind of exhausting and definitely more suited to very young people, I think.
Yes. Definitely. Well, getting to the place I've discovered you, what was the process to being cast for Twin Peaks? How did that happen to you?
Joanna Ray was somebody that I met. She was the casting director, and she cast me in for a Calvin Klein obsession campaign that David Lynch was directing, and I was cast with Lara Flynn Boyle.
Okay.
And to do commercials and to do the print work. So I did that, and I met David, and he suggested I come in the following week and read for this character they weren't quite sure about, like what they could sell. I went in and gave them my best dick. So.
I could laugh for hours on that alone.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, you're a good dick. You're a good dick. Like, why, thank you.
So was the character created really in a sense for you because you came in? I imagine some of your Scottish brogue and a few other things, the elements about you sort of defined that character.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't quite sure where the character came from, and I sort of assumed he'd probably stumbled across the border from Canada.
Yes.
Because it's pretty, Victoria and British Columbia and Vancouver are all pretty Scottish. And I think probably, just made his way sort of south of the border and became considered himself to be a big star in this tiny little town. But then as it unfolded, he actually came from there because, it was one of the doctor, I can't remember his name, so, a line in one of the episodes basically said, I should have dropped you on the head the day I helped your mother give birth. Or and that was the first time I was like, when he said it, I was like, I'm from here. That's like, wow.
I think that was Warren Frost that said that.
It was Warren Frost.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm curious, were you allowed to ad-lib that character? Because, I mean, to me...
It depended on the director, actually. Some of every week was a different director.
That's right.
And some directors were definitely kind of a little looser than others. Some were kind of sticklers for but it was so well written. And especially, working with Harry and working with Kimmy, and, the writing was so clever that you didn't, I think occasionally we may have ad-libbed.
Yes.
I think Harry and I definitely did, but...
well, the show was was notoriously dark in that first season, and then the second season got a little silly. But the truth be told, what made the show wonderful for me was that mix, the melancholy versus the absurd.
Yeah.
And I thought how you and Harry both played your characters, even though they were exaggerated versions of what I believe maybe the character originally started at, they took you out of the darkness and let you breathe for a moment before the show took you back into murder.
Right.
And that was really important to me, and I was really distressed when they started changing the storylines to remove that dynamic. Was that a struggle for you as an actor on the show? Not throwing anything under the bus, but what were key moments to you that made you think maybe this isn't going where I had hoped?
I don't think I was aware of that, actually. I wasn't really. I think Harry sort of worked kind of across the board. I didn't. I worked in our little soap opera love triangle, except towards the end, of course, when the show was coming to a close, and we all the big, the finale stuff for the Miss Twin Peaks and everything else, and it all became very dark. But I never. Every episode for me, and I never read a full script. We weren't given full scripts, so I never really kind of sort of read was aware of any direction or where any of it was going. I just kind of, I toddled in and did our little love triangle soap opera and then went home. So
sure. Well, were you asked to reprise your role for season 3 because you clearly weren't in the new show?
There was talk of it. I think I was in the loop for a bit, and then I think I think it shifted, but I don't know. I haven't had that conversation. Yeah. I think I'm.
Well, if there's ever a season 4 kicked around, perhaps you'll end up back. I would love to find out what happened to Dick after the series ended.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. If somebody asked me where I thought Dick would be, and I said he would be running like a second-rate model agency in Milan. Probably,
and fathered 14 more children or something to that.
Possibly, yes. Yes.
Well, I wanted to congratulate you on your Emmy in 1997.
Oh, thank you.
And, I was recently watching this as preparation for meeting you today, and I had never actually seen the video of your acceptance, and it was so heartwarming to me. You were clearly moved. Was this a completely unexpected thing, or was it finally sort of receiving your due?
I think it was a combination of things. I think the years I'd been nominated previously, I had resisted the whole thing, apart from having, going to, submitting a tape, going to New York, because it was, then in those days held Radio City, which was just pretty phenomenal. And it was a whole week of events, of parties, And even from the first year, like people would, as people do, like people that I worked with and people that I knew and I was friends with would say things like, well, you're the favorite. And I would be so resistant, like, no, like. And the year before, I actually gave in and thought, wow, this is great, this is exciting. And then I didn't win. So the year that I did win, people had said, you're the favorite. I was like, I've heard that so many times. I don't care. It doesn't, it's of no interest to me. I'm here. I'm dressed up. I'm in the front row. And then they said my name. And I was sitting with Michael Tylo, and he said, they've said your name. And I was completely shocked.
Wow.
So, yeah. Numb, but shocked.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was on Rosie O'Donnell's show, I think later that week, and she said, did you have anything written down? I said, no, but I just thought the people that I could see, I just thought I'd thank them. And I was thanking like people that I could, see. And I said, I could see you, but I knew that there was no reason to thank you. But I could see Martha Stewart, and I thought, no, there's no reason to thank Martha. And I could see Oprah, and I was like, no, don't thank Oprah. And then I suddenly saw something. Oh yeah, I should thank Brad. I should thank Lucy Johnson. I should thank that. So.
Oh, that's fabulous. Let me ask you something about One Night in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. This is a little short you did not so long ago.
Right.
How did that happen? I had a chance to see this. I actually watched it yesterday, and I love. There's a great line in it where you say, "I don't read scripts with rage in them," and that.
Yeah, that's a line. Actually, I can't remember the name of the person who said it, but somebody actually said that, and the girl who wrote the script, she used that line because somebody actually said that. Somebody who a producer at Paramount. That came about because a very old friend of mine, Francesca von Tyson, who I knew in London way back in the late 70s. She produced that, and she had the director contact me and see if I would read it, was interested in doing it, and I was. And I think we're halfway to doing 1 week in Hollywood, so I think it's that.
Okay.
It's been written, and I think they've got half the money, so we'll see.
So I'm assuming because you have relationships with these people, this is how you ended up in that particular role.
Yes.
Do you represent yourself, or do you have an agent that finds opportunities like that for you? I'm just curious, if somebody came up to you and said, I have a script, would you read it? What are your considerations for doing something like a short?
If it's somebody, if somebody sends me something, I'll read it. Yeah, absolutely. If my agent suggests I read something, then I'll read it. I mean, I love to read, so I'm kind of like, I read stuff all the time, especially now. Somebody can send you a script online, and you can just zip through it. So.
Right. Do you have any desired? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
The slight delay causes this. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's all right. There's a truck outside my window doing a backup beeping sound that I'm like.
Yeah, I've heard it for the last 10 minutes, but I think we'll survive.
Yeah, it's very annoying. But you were lucky. Usually there's a helicopter. Whenever I do anything online, there's a helicopter. So,
sure. Do you have any?
Not today.
Do you have any desire to do theater work?
I do. I'm actually. It's interesting. I'm going tonight. Ladies of the Lake got nominated for an Emmy, but Emmys, but also Indies, which is an independent award for streaming and online series. And I'm going to the Colony Theatre tonight. I got nominated for guest actor, a supporting actor. And I haven't been to the Colony since I did Lion in Winter with Mariette Hartley 3 years ago.
Wow.
So it was the last time I actually did a full theatrical production. But I do stage readings with the company, the New Phoenix Theatre Company. We do almost like they're like doing radio plays, just with an audience, just sitting around and doing a stage reading of classics or Shakespeare. But it's hard work. theater.
Sure. I imagine there's a feedback and a payoff, though, that is significantly different. It's almost like being a comedian on stage. You get an instant response from the audience, good or bad.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But there's nothing worse than being on stage and wishing you were home in bed. It's kind of that happened to me several times.
Well,
I don't want to be here. I want to be home in bed with a good book. This is not where I want.
Well, trust me, Ian, it happens to me pretty much every time I do a podcast. I feel like I put my foot in my mouth. The desperate idea to speak, to not leave any dead space or to say something witty so I can keep my guest engaged. It's a tough racket, this world.
It is. I think you just have to let it go and just, know that just existing is enough, I think.
Yeah.
Or, well, almost enough,
Well, Kim Kardashian proves that, so.
Yes. Yes.
Well, as I had mentioned before, you don't shy away from your political leanings on social media. What message would you want to get out there that doesn't necessarily share, I don't know, I want to say this safely, but I guess let me say it a different way. I found, again, as I said before, that you're a very gracious individual and that you do tend to give the other side the opportunity to speak, and that you believe in moderacy. And I think this is a really, really powerful thing, and it's so rare online today. Is there the desire to create a more even agenda across your social media space to try to get people to see not so much both sides, but to try to come to the middle and at least figure out ways to get through and to agree? Because you don't seem to be radically progressive. You just seem to be forward thinking, and that's really important.
Yeah, I think I'm a great believer in common decency, and I think along with that you can find common ground. I think people are inherently decent. Most of my experiences are with, and I find that if I tend to not express too much of my own opinion, because I think the more I get to understand, the less I feel the need for myself to be heard. So therefore, I express myself in other ways, with things that I think kind of bring people together and allow people to share something that's important to me, and therefore have a dialogue that takes them away from anything that's too narrow or anything that's fear-based or anything that, I support equality. I support civil rights and definitely equal rights and women's rights, reproductive rights. I support all of these things. I think, but in supporting all of those, I realized a lot of things are not my fight because they're not my business. So, I try to mind my own business. And I find by doing that, then I keep out of other people's business. It's not like, and I think people should mind their own business more and not be minding other people's. And, you've got politicians criticizing teenagers, and 2 years ago, their teenage son was arrested for the third DUI. It's like, don't criticize teens for doing positive things when you can't clean up your own mess. So, I tend to see things that way and therefore say nothing. So,
yeah, the hypocrisy is louder than ever, and it's certainly frustrating. But I do notice behind you on the wall, you have a gorgeous portrait of a certain ex-president. Is that on purpose? Is that on purpose for today?
No, this room is better because it's probably the quietest. I live in the city, but it's actually. You can see it.
I see your ulterior motive. President Obama. Yes,
but by not saying anything. It was taken by a friend of mine and printed as a limited series. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I like that.
I thought it might have been yours, so I wanted to compliment it, but it's a lovely photo.
Yes, it is. It's a great photo. I love it.
Well, if I may, before we end here, I definitely want to finish strong. And one of the key focuses about our discussion today is this charity that you are now focused on. You had mentioned to me, I believe, and if I want to say it correctly, and I'll let you, but I'll say it's Alfalit. Is this correct?
Alfalit, yes, Alfalit.
Could you tell my audience about Alfalit and what it's doing?
Yes, Alfalit promotes literacy throughout the world, predominantly in third world countries, where. And I've seen it makes a huge difference. Just people learning to read and write, they can improve their lives. They can get work that they normally wouldn't get. They can actually read medication, which is kind of interesting when millions of people in the world can't read a label. And I've always been inspired by something that another Scottish actor, Sean Connery, said, that his first big break in his life he got when he was 5 years old because he had learned to read and write. And I was, raised in Scotland and educated and also learned to read and write at the time I was 5. And it's been a massive thing in my life because I think being able to read and being a reader, you're never bored, you're never lonely. Constantly you can engage with things. You don't have to look for external or anything to just any distraction to occupy your mind. You can actually focus on things that you choose, and I love that. And I've been around people who develop that, and it's so remarkable. And I think it's a wonderful Alfalit gives the gift of literacy to hundreds of thousands of people every year. So.
How did you happen upon it? What was the catalyst?
A friend of mine had been working with other Wounded Warrior and other charity stuff, and he went there to work and focused. Introduced me to it and focused. I did some public announcements for them and some voiceover stuff and some introduced some of their programs, and I just loved it from the very beginning. I just loved it. I'm very proud to be part of it, and it changes people's lives, and it's very, very important. It's very important, I think.
Do you do traveling fundraising for it as well?
I haven't this year, but I will again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do a lot. They do a lot of programs in South America, Central America, in the Caribbean, Dominican, and Africa now too. So.
Okay, I'd like to discuss that with you offline, simply because I do have a number of groups I'm involved with in the Seattle area, and if you would ever be interested in coming up here and sharing with a large, room of people talking about Alfalit as well as other charities that are being focused on, I think it'd be fabulous to have you.
Sure, absolutely.
So you had mentioned too that the proceeds, I have it written down here, go to the Sandy Rollman Ovarian Cancer Foundation.
Oh no, I'm doing a Legends of General Hospital.
Oh, okay. Okay, I misunderstood.
That's on the. I think the May 5th and 6th. I think the May 5th in Philadelphia, I believe, and May 6th in Boston. And the proceeds from the lunch and the evening, the dinner, are going to the Sandy Rollman Ovarian Cancer Foundation. Yeah.
Okay. Were you a friend of Sandy's?
No. The lady who puts this together, I think, is a great supporter of that foundation. So.
Okay. Are you on the board of this charity or any others?
No, I'm not. I'm not on the board. I'm printing several of my flower photographs they'll be sold to benefit the Sandy Rollman Foundation. So.
Okay. Well, I try to end my shows on a bit of lightness. Can we play a short game together?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, you've heard of 20 questions. I have my own oddball version of them, and I promise there aren't any things that are too weird or offensive in here. But after hearing my definition earlier, I believe everybody has a superhero quality, a superpower, and that they're enacting it into the world once they've sort of achieved some success and they have some notoriety and value. What would you consider to be your own unique superpower?
I don't know. Probably accessibility. I think I've learned to be sort of accessible and share myself and not be afraid to be who I am and what I am and bring the best of myself. So I don't know if that's a superpower, but I think it's something that I've learned to do. It's something that I'm doing. I'm very consistent with it now. So
yeah, well, you did it for me today, so thank you.
Oh.
If you had to move to another country permanently, where would you go and why?
I'm going back to Portugal this summer, and I love it. I love the people. I love the culture. I love Spain. I always have, but I love Portugal. I just love it. It's very colorful. I just love the music. I love the food. People are very personable. There's a great harmonious mix of many cultures. You know, the European, North African. It's a lovely, lovely place, and I'm looking forward to going back.
Fabulous. As an actor, what haven't you done yet that you hope happens in the end of your career?
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I know what I don't want. I think I've always kind of been motivated not by what I don't want. So I've never really been motivated by what I want. So
okay.
I've always said I don't want that ever again. So
that's great.
I know what I don't want, but and I don't want to be sitting in a big fancy trailer all alone for 20 hours ever again, day after day.
Sure. I completely understand that. Not even having done it, but I imagine it has to be very, very difficult.
Yes.
What has to happen for an acting role to be as close to perfect as you could have?
That's for me, that's the magic of it. I tend to, I'm very cautious when I approach a role, very cautious when before I and often nothing extraordinary happens until it all comes together. I tend to be very careful and not make choices and not have a preset idea of what it's going to be. And then I allow, whatever, because you're with other people, it's not just about me, and whatever comes together is usually incredibly unique, and that's kind of how it all comes about for me. It's kind of a little scary, but that's usually how I know some people who go in with a clear idea of what they want something to be, and they don't change, and it ends up being very good. But I don't work that way.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how eccentric do you think you are?
I can be very eccentric. 1 to 10. I can be a 9.
Really?
Yeah. I can also be just like a 5. I think I can. I don't. I know some pretty wild eccentrics. I'm not an extrovert, so
right.
I think a lot of, if you're an extrovert and eccentric, then you definitely are kind of a in-your-face eccentricity. I'm not that. I tend to be kind of a subtle eccentric.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Some oddball questions here. What's your least favorite meal? Or maybe the question should be, what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Strangest thing I've ever eaten? Oh, probably a quail, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which was in Pâté in the south of France, and I thought it was a walnut, and it was an entire quail. And I sort of crunched my way through it. Never again. I'm actually I don't eat meat, so I only eat fish. So
okay, you're not a vegan, but a vegetarian.
Yeah, vegetarian.
A fishitarian, I think is what.
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian. That's what.
Pescatarian.
Fishitarian.
Yes.
I can't believe I said that.
Right.
Do you like Kate Bush as much as I do?
Yes, I do like her. I like her. I actually narrated a retrospective of her career in New York several years ago, and I hadn't heard a lot of well-known artists did her songs, and it was really quite extraordinary. I kind of had a greater understanding of just who she is and what she is. I like her. I like her a lot.
That's great. Good answer. Tell me something that you believe to be true that nobody else believes, like UFOs or Jesus.
I believe in that. I believe in magic. I believe magic happens. I think you just have to allow it. I believe in magic. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I think life is pretty magical if you get out of the way and just allow it to. As I always I like it to unfold as opposed to unravel. So it's kind of, I see magic. I believe it. I like it.
All right. That's a great answer. If you could only describe yourself with one word, what would that be?
I don't know. One word. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Humble, I think, which is not a very humble answer, which takes away from it.
Right. When you have to tell people you're humble,
Yes.
it might.
Yes.
It
You're
might
not. You're not. Yes. You're not. Yeah. You're not humble. I don't know. I'm kind of. I definitely earnest. I think.
Wonderful.
I think people think I'm sort of goofy, but I'm actually pretty earnest. I'm very conscientious of consequence and conscientious of people's feelings and conscientious. I think
that's wonderful.
Earnest. Did I say earnest?
There you go. Pick one of them. It's good. If you could go back to 1 year in your life, what year would you go back to, and why?
I think I would. There was definitely, I think, a year in my life where I realized my life was going to be a lot bigger than I'd ever anticipated. And I'd like to go back and just sort of maybe maybe not understand it, but just perhaps, it's one of these. I remember very clearly when everything sort of suddenly changed, and it wasn't. It was when I was 21, 22, when I realized that I was going to be the focus of a lot of attention and going to be subjected to a lot of judgment and criticism and stuff I'd never had prepared myself for. So I'd like to go back and sort of look at that differently. I think I went into a state of shock probably for about 5 years of just being sort of blasted with, sort of information and,
shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, exactly. Backwards, it felt like. But some days I still feel that way. If I have to be on set at 6:30 in the morning, sometimes I feel as if I have been shot backwards, naked, out of a canyon.
Oh my goodness!
Canyon. Yeah,
or a canyon, either way.
Or a canyon. Yeah, I have to go over the canyon to get in the canyon. So,
do you have a favorite on-set story of failure? A blunder on the set or some behind-the-scenes debacle that occurred that you can share, I should say.
Oh, I have so many that I can share. Yeah, I was with Finola Hughes last night at a little book. A friend of ours launched a wonderful book, his first book, Folded Notes from High School. It's a great book. And we were at the book launch last night, and we were laughing because she plays Anna Devane on General Hospital. We've known each other for most over half of our lives. And we were laughing because somebody had said to her, like, did she remember my first day on the set? And she said, yeah, she remembered it because I was completely oblivious, and they were just about, all the cameras and all the crew, and they were just about to start rolling tape, start filming. And I bent down, and she's like, saying, what are you doing? And I said, why don't they clean this carpet? There's all these like little pieces of colored tape stuck everywhere. It's ridiculous. Doesn't somebody come and clean this? And she said, those are our marks. Those were where we're supposed to be standing. You didn't pay attention in the morning. I was like, no, I didn't. I did not. So they had to come in and replace all the marks. So, I was like, oh my gosh! Did you tell me I was supposed to stand there? And they were like, yes. I was like, oh, sorry. I've had many days like that.
It goes back towards that 6:30 a.m. call, right? It does. Too early. The travesty of waking up that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, what are 3 things that you currently cannot live without?
Probably music, a perfect martini at the end of the day.
Oh my goodness!
And definitely just my mind's eye, which I just love. I've never I love how I see things. I love transferring words into images in my mind. I love I love how I see things. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have that. I don't know what I'd do.
Is there any way? Is there any place we can go to support your work? If you're creating these works of art and you're donating them, as an example, is there a website or somewhere we can?
No, I just I put they're on Instagram, and also they're on IM, which is a Getty site where they copyright stuff, and people can buy them there, I guess. But I need to I'll make more of a push, I think, to sell, because when they're printed, they're beautiful, and people really enjoy them. So I generally give them away as gifts, but I think I could probably benefit other people more by being more productive than actually.
Sure. Okay, then the last question, General Hospital or Days of Our Lives? And remember, Days is my favorite of all time.
Right.
No, it's probably your first love, I imagine. It's probably General Hospital if you had to pick.
I like Bold and Beautiful too.
Okay.
I like Bold and Beautiful too. But between General Hospital and Days, definitely, I think General Hospital changed my life. I think Bold and Beautiful changed my life also. So
yeah, and you've been there for quite some time now.
I have 26 years, I think, off and on. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was the wrong way to ask that question. I should ask that question again.
No, it's all right. You don't have to ask it again.
What didn't I ask you today, Ian, that you would like to share with the world? Anything special, anything unique, anything purposeful, any visionary concept, any other charity, any mission?
No, nothing particular. I raise money for juvenile diabetes because one of my friend's sons developed it at 2 years old, and I'm very close to him, so I know what a struggle it is for him and for families. So I do their marathon, or walkathon, and I raise money for that. I think it's a very good cause. It's the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. That's it. Child Help is another charity that I do stuff for. So they have their own foster program and take children out of cases of severe abuse, and they have homes around the country, and they've been around for almost 60 years, and they're a very wonderful organization. Started by two actresses in the 50s when they were in Japan entertaining the troops, and they came across like a bunch of street children who were half Asian, half American, and they'd been abandoned because nobody wanted them, and they managed to bring them back to America and get them into homes. So they began this wonderful charity, Child Help. It's very well known, and it's just wonderful. So I like that too.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure I link all of these things with the website, all the data, etc., and get that out there to the public.
Right.
But look, you've been fabulous. It's an incredible honor. I have to say, I rarely am intimidated anymore, and this is just one of those moments where I just couldn't contain myself and just hold myself back and just struggle to get through this thing because I was atrocious. But thank you for saving me, Ian.
Oh, you've been lovely. Thank you. You've been wonderful. I've enjoyed that.